Okay. So here I want to discuss the three underutilized ways to boost downloads and gain new subscribers. You can do this through podcast player ads, podcast social apps, and swap, drop, and roll with collaborations. So the first one I want to go over is Castro ads. Now keep in mind that all of these screenshots I'm showing you is from over a year ago, probably like a year and a half. So as far as the details of pricing and impressions, tab subscriptions, as far as what you can expect, that could be different. But at the time, so I did the $99 7-day promo, and what to expect, it's anticipated to get 15,000 to 20,000 impressions. The taps, 66 to 115, and subscriptions are 15 to 50. So the difference between those is an impression is how many times your ad is seen. A tap is how many times your ad is clicked on, and subscription is how many subscribers have actually clicked subscribe or follow or whatever. So that was what to expect. Now here's the actual result. And the result was better than the expectation, which is always a good thing. Instead of 15 to 20,000 impressions, I got 25,000. I got 104 taps, so kind of on the higher end here. And then I got 29 subscribes, which is in the middle here. So basically what that comes to, I got 29 subscribers for $99, which comes to $3.41 per subscriber. I would say anything below $5 is decent. I would like to get more around $1, but under 5 is decent. I think anything above 5 is like pretty expensive. Now, the other one I did was Buzzsprout ads. So $100 for 5,000 quote unquote downloads. And why I say that is because the downloads here is not defined by how many downloads your podcast receives, but the number of downloads your ad appears on other podcasts. I initially matched with 650 podcasts and I narrowed it down to 53, as you can see here. The screen I'm showing you here is after I eliminated almost 600. So that's a very manual and time-consuming process. You're only allowed to run ad at a time, and the ads must be 20 to 40 seconds. So the thing is with Castro, you don't have to create an ad. It just, your podcast pops up basically. Whereas this, you actually record an ad that will play at the front end of whatever podcast. And there's no way to determine how many downloads or subscribers are gained from the ad. So I had 650 podcasts that I matched. I picked 53 of those. And 17 of those actually played, 4 declined. I'm not really sure what happened to these other ones. The problem with this one is there's no way for me to know how many downloads and subscribers actually gained from it. This is from January of 2023. The thing that's different about Mopod, as far as I understand it, and I would like to get these guys in the Amp My Pod community to give a demo and explain, but from what I understand, their ads don't necessarily display in podcast apps and players. It's more like web-based. So like if someone goes to a website, your ad might appear. My ad, and also $100, 12,500 impressions, 173 plays, and 116 downloads, meaning those are actual literal downloads of my podcast that I can trace back to my podcast. So basically 116 downloads for $100. Now, again, I don't know in this situation how many subscribers, if any, I got from it. All I know is that I got 116 downloads. So I'm not doing this pricing per subscriber. A download doesn't mean as much as a subscriber, because a download is just a download. A subscriber, they're getting notifications when you have a new episode. They'll hopefully listen to multiple episodes, etc. So 86 cents is per download. Now, so earlier I said that $5 per subscriber. Anything under $5 a subscriber, I think is decent. And I would say anything under $1 per download is decent, though that could get quite expensive. So I was just testing these out. Let's see. Now, they changed this a little bit. So this was September of 2022. Disco by Headliner. I think they are now calling it Promo by Headliner or something like that. So the name has changed, but it might work about the same way. So now this one, I actually was gifted this. So basically, I will spend my own money and test things for 100 or less per thing, and that's what I did on those others. But this one, they actually, so I could test out their platform, gifted me with, I don't know if it was $250 or 1,000 downloads, but that's what it came to. So but you can do it as low as $50 and you can do a custom budget. So basically I got 1,001 total downloads and it came to $250.25. I believe this was a month long, I think. And so like each day it would get, or maybe it was a 10-day, because each day was about 100 downloads and $25. So I think it was like $25 a day for 10 days type thing. So that came to 25 cents per download, which so far is clearly the best bang for the buck in terms of download numbers. And again, here, I don't know about subscribers. Okay, so that was ads. Now let's talk about podcast players or directories. I like ones where there's kind of a social component, almost like social media, but just for podcasts. So Good Pods, that's a really good one. I've actually had the person who created it, or the CEO, on my show. What I like about this is people can comment, rate, review, like, share, etc., etc. So like, for example, I've had 114 listens, a 5.0 with 346 rankings. I'm in the leaderboards here, 65 in top 100 overall all-time chart, etc., etc. You can read these here. 346 ratings with a 5.0. This here, 62 comments. I think everyone who has a podcast should be on Good Pods. Okay, so Podvine, that's similar in that people can comment, etc. And this was from November and December of 2022. So here are some different comments that people have made about the show. It's just good because the thing is, in podcast players and apps and stuff like Apple, Spotify, etc., there's not really a way to communicate and connect with the audience or your listeners. But like with Podvine and Good Pods, and I'm sure there are others, you can. And so that's what I really like about them. Okay, so here are some other tactics. Swap, drop, and roll. That's what I call it. Kind of like stop, drop, and roll. So swap it out. Arrange a pod swap where you place a podcast episode from another podcast that's relevant to your audience, of course, in your feed in exchange for that podcast host placing one of your episodes in their feed. This is a good free method for exposure. Note, when doing this, be sure to record and include a brief intro explaining what you are doing and why so that the listeners aren't confused. Also, do this sparingly to avoid upsetting listeners. After all, they listen for you, not another host. So that's one good approach. Or drop it like it's hot, drop it like it's hot. So there's 3 options here. So one is a trailer drop, which is similar to a swap, but just for the trailer instead of a full episode. So basically just your trailer would be on someone else's, the beginning of their episode. Or it could be anywhere in the episode, but typically the beginning. Feed drop, record one interview and drop it in both podcast hosts' feeds for cross promo. And I actually did this. I was a guest on a podcast called Be Bold Begin by Christina Barcy, shout out. She maybe suggested, I don't know, but the interview was pretty good and whatnot. And so instead of like having her on my show, we just took her episode that I was on and put it, because it was more of a conversation, and put it into my feed. And then a part 1, part 2 drop. Now, I haven't done this yet, but I'm thinking about it. So alternatively, record a part 1 and part 2, where part 1 is on one podcast host feed and part 2 is on the other host feed. So an example CTA for this would be, to listen to part 2 of this episode, be sure to check out such and such podcast. Note, the CTA would have to be recorded 2 different ways for part 1 and part 2. Roll with it. So pay for a pre, mid, or post-roll ad insertion with another podcast in your niche using a paid platform such as Buzzsprout Ads, Overcast, Podcast Addict, Fountain, Spotify, Player FM, Podbay, Pocket Casts, or Podcast Republic. I'll include that in a document below this. So I hope you got something out of this. Let me know if you have any comments, questions, or concerns.